Dr. Night Echoes. Good evening, everyone. Tonight's stories come from the quietest hours of the night, when every light is off. But whatever was lurking in the dark hadn't. I work at a mortuary, and most of my shifts involve night calls. When the phone rings between 1 and 4 in the morning, it's almost always us who have to respond. That night, everything seemed routine. We picked up the body, drove back, and rolled the stretcher into the cooler area. I was at the head, walking backward, guiding the wheels. My coworker was at the foot, pushing forward. The cooler was wide enough for both of us, but the darkness behind him made the room feel even smaller. As we crossed the threshold, the door behind him slammed shut so hard I felt the air push against my shirt. At the exact same second, the lights went out. All of them. Total darkness. The sound echoed through the cooler like we'd been sealed inside. I didn't scream, but my whole body locked. I couldn't see my coworker. I couldn't see the stretcher. I couldn't see anything. I only heard him hiss, "Who the hell is in here?" before he shoved past me and ran for the door. He sounded furious. I was shaking. I followed him out and reached for the hallway switch, but before I touched anything, the lights snapped back on by themselves. He was already in the hall, looking ready to tackle someone. His whole posture looked like he expected to find an intruder. After a few seconds, another coworker came rushing in from the offices after hearing the noise. We told him exactly what happened. He looked confused and said there hadn't been any power issue in the main hall at all. The lights never flickered anywhere else in the building. He even checked the breaker panel to be sure. He kept saying it didn't make sense that the lights would shut off only inside the cooler, especially not all at once. Especially not with the door slamming at the same time. He stood there thinking, then laughed a little and said, "Maybe the dead guy was trying to tell you something." Nobody laughed with him. The thing that still bothers me is the door. The cooler door is designed to close slowly on its own. It doesn't slam, ever. You can't make it slam unless you force it. Even my coworker said he barely touched it before it shut. I still think about how hard that door hit. Harder than a person should have been able to do without trying. And how the lights went out only where we were standing, with the body between us. Whatever happened in that room didn't feel like a joke. I had just put my 3-year-old son to bed after his bath. He was out cold within minutes. I went to the living room and turned on the TV. A couple of hours later, I heard a mechanical whirring sound coming from the bathroom. At first, I thought it was the fan. Then I remembered I hadn't turned it on. I walked toward the sound, and the moment I pushed the door open, bubbles drifted into the hallway. The bubble machine, the one in the bathtub that hadn't worked in weeks, was running. It was blowing streams of bubbles into the room like it was brand new. I stood there staring at it, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. I turned it off manually and checked the switch. The batteries had been dead. I'd checked them before. My son was still sound asleep when I went to his room. He hadn't moved. I tried to brush it off, but the uneasiness didn't go away, especially because this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. When I was a teenager, a waffle iron heated up in a closet, smoking, hot, ready to burn through the shelf it was on. It wasn't plugged in. Nobody admitted to touching it. My mom had her own story. When I was little, she once woke up to the sound of my battery-powered toy train running in the kitchen. She assumed I'd gotten up to play with it, but when she checked on me, I was asleep in bed. The train was moving in circles by itself. All of it points to one thing. Either electrical stuff in our family behaves strangely, Or something likes turning things on when no one's looking. Honestly, I'm not sure which explanation scares me more. 3. I live next to an old graveyard. The kind with stones so weathered you can't read most of the names. Some date back to the 1830s. I always joked with my wife that we had ghosts for neighbors, but I didn't really believe it. The first time something happened, I was lying in bed reading before sleep. The house was quiet. No electronics on, no music, just me flipping pages. Then I heard a child laughing inside my bedroom. I lowered the book slowly, looked around the room. Nothing, just stillness. No neighbors had kids, no TVs were on. The sound made no sense, so I did the only thing I could do. I raised the book again and pretended I hadn't heard anything. Another time, I was in the basement getting laundry when I heard footsteps walking down the hallway upstairs. Clear and steady, like someone pacing. I stood still, listening. Every step came from directly above me. After 20 minutes of staring at the stairwell, I finally said out loud, "If you're here, could you leave? I need to go to bed." The footsteps stopped. Sometimes joking about having ghost neighbors isn't that funny when the house actually answers back. I used to work at a hotel that had been converted from an old factory. The basement always felt off. Not scary right away, just heavy. One day, while walking past the far wall, I noticed movement in my peripheral vision. I turned and saw what looked like a person stepping back into the darkness. It wasn't fast. It wasn't dramatic. Just a shape pulling away from the light. I assumed it was my own shadow. That made the most sense. To be sure, I retraced my steps, stood in the same spot, and moved the same way. My shadow didn't fall anywhere near where that shape had been. Another day, I heard whistling. It wasn't random. It had a rhythm. A few notes repeated over and over. At first, I thought it was air moving through a pipe. I walked the entire basement trying to find the source. When I got to one end, the whistling stopped. When I went back to my work area, it started again. I stood still and listened. It felt intentional. I later learned 2 people had died there. One fell down an elevator shaft. Another was crushed in the loading dock. Knowing that didn't explain anything, but it made the feeling harder to ignore. Some nights, just walking down there made my chest tighten, like my body wanted me out immediately. I never stayed down there longer than I had to, and I still think that place noticed who was alone. I was 13 when it happened, and it's still one of the clearest memories I have. I woke up suddenly around 1 in the morning. The first thing I heard was a woman's voice coming from my closet. She was speaking German, clear, flat, like she was reading something out loud. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for my brain to wake up enough to tell me I was dreaming. But I didn't fade back to sleep. The voice stayed steady, not muffled, not distant. It sounded like she was standing right inside the closet, facing the door. I thought about running to my parents' room. Then I realized I'd have to walk past the closet to get there. I couldn't make myself move, so I stayed completely still and listened. I don't remember the words. I just remember how calm she sounded, like she wasn't talking to me, just talking. Eventually, somehow, I fell asleep again. At exactly 3 in the morning, I woke up a second time. She was screaming, the same voice, the same language, but now it was panic, terror, like she was being hurt, like she was begging, The sound filled the whole room. My skin went cold. I ran. I didn't think. I didn't care about the closet anymore. I burst into my parents' room, crying and shaking, trying to explain between breaths. My dad got up immediately and checked my room. He opened the closet. He stood there listening. Nothing. No sound. No movement. I stayed with them for a while. When things finally felt quiet, I went back to my room. As I stepped inside, I felt someone close behind me. Danka. One word. Soft. Right next to my ear. I never told anyone else after that. I knew how it sounded. I knew no one would believe me. But I know what I heard, and I still can't sleep with my closet door closed. I work at a small cafe that has an upstairs office area. To get to it, you have to go through two doors. One, a short hallway, then another door. They make a distinct sound when they shut, and at night you notice every little noise because the place gets quiet fast after the cook leaves. I was closing alone that night, just sweeping and mopping, trying to get everything done so I could leave. I had my back to the staircase doors when I heard one of them slam, hard, loud enough that I jumped and dropped the mop handle. My first thought was that my boss had come back to grab something from upstairs. But then I remembered, if she had opened the first door, I would have heard the second. Those doors always make noise. They have metal frames that echo in the hallway, and I hadn't heard anything except the one slam. I looked over and saw that the door I could see was closed, completely shut. The lights upstairs were off. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. I walked toward the doors, expecting maybe someone had left earlier and came back without me noticing. I opened the first door. The hallway light didn't come on. I pushed the second door open. Her office was dark, empty. I was the only one there. I finished closing as fast as I could. That wasn't the only strange thing, though. A while later, I woke up in the middle of the night because I felt someone standing next to my bed, not moving, just standing there. When I opened my eyes, I saw a figure leaning over me. No face, just a shape with what looked like a fedora and a long brown coat. Before I could scream, it shot backwards so fast my eyes couldn't follow it. I jumped out of bed swinging, yelling loud enough that my mom ran into the room. She flicked the light on and asked what happened. I didn't have an answer she would believe. I still don't know if that thing was connected to the cafe or just something that followed me home. Either way, it felt real in a way dreams don't. My wife and kids were out of town, so I had the house to myself. I don't usually mind being alone. The place was quiet in that deep, empty way houses get when everyone's gone. I went to bed late and turned everything off. I was half asleep when I heard it. Children's laughter. Not loud, not close, just enough to slip into my awareness and pull me awake. I lay still, staring at the ceiling, telling myself it was a dream. Houses make noise. Brains fill in gaps. That's what I told myself. Then I heard singing, a child's voice, soft, repeating, stop and go, followed by more laughter. My chest tightened. I reached for the big Maglite flashlight I keep by the bed and got up, holding it like something I might have to use. The hallway was dark. The air felt thicker than it should have. Every step sounded too loud. The noise came again, but this time it sounded wrong, tinny, electronic. I followed it into the living room. My son's plastic ride-on bus was sitting in the middle of the floor. Its lights were blinking. Music was playing. The same cheap melody I'd heard 1,000 times before. The toy hadn't been touched all day. Nobody had been home. I stood there, breathing slow, listening to it play. Then I bent down and switched it off. The house felt alert after that, like I wasn't alone anymore. A few days later, I remembered something I'd noticed before. Sometimes when I pressed buttons on the TV remote, that toy would react, light up, make noise, like it picked up stray signals. But the remote wasn't anywhere near it that night, and I wasn't touching anything. Sometimes I still think about what frequency that toy picked up at 3 in the morning and what else might have been listening. It happened a couple of months ago while I was out to dinner with my boyfriend. We were mid-conversation, sitting at a normal restaurant, just enjoying our food after a long day. Then it hit me. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't anxiety. It felt physical, like something heavy passed straight through my body and settled inside my chest. I stopped chewing without realizing it. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The feeling wasn't pain. It was dread, deep and wrong. The kind of dread that doesn't come with a reason. It felt like something terrible had just happened, or was about to, and my body knew before my mind did. I started looking around the restaurant without knowing why. Nothing looked different. People were laughing. Plates were clinking. Music played softly in the background. But I felt disconnected, like there was a layer of glass between me and everyone else. My boyfriend noticed right away. He stopped talking and asked if I was okay. I tried to answer, but my throat felt tight. I was seconds from crying, even though I didn't know why. My hands were shaking under the table. The feeling stayed for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It felt much longer. Then, just as suddenly as it arrived, it lifted. The pressure faded. My chest felt normal again. I could breathe without thinking about it. I told him I was fine because technically I was. I didn't feel sick. I didn't feel scared anymore, just confused. Nothing bad happened that night. No phone calls, no emergencies, no news. That almost makes it worse. Sometimes I still think about how strong that feeling was and how real it felt without any explanation. Like my body reacted to something my mind never got to see. I live in a small house next to my father's place, surrounded by woods. At night, it gets completely dark out there. No streetlights, no passing cars, just trees and silence. This happened about a year ago. It was well past midnight, and I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep. My eyes were closed, but I wasn't fully out. I remember my thoughts drifting when I suddenly heard a sound outside. It was a scream. Not a normal scream. Not human. Not animal. The sound was loud enough that it felt like it hit my house, like it passed straight over the roof. I froze instantly. My breath caught halfway in. The scream sounded stretched and broken, like pain mixed with rage. I had never heard anything like it before. The worst part was how it moved. The sound didn't stay in one place. It traveled fast. I heard it start on one side of the house, rush over me, then vanish into the woods in less than a second, like something flew by at full speed while screaming. Then everything went silent. I sat up in bed, heart pounding so hard it made my chest ache. I turned on every light I could reach without getting up. My hands were shaking. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just lay there, listening, waiting for it to come back. The next morning, I told my dad what happened. Before I finished, he said he heard it too. He'd rushed to the window, thinking something was attacking the house. He saw nothing. We still don't know what it was. There are no animals here that move like that, and nothing should sound like that. I still sleep with the light on when the woods are too quiet. I work in an old warehouse that's been around for decades. When I was younger, I was often the only one there late at night, locking up after shifts. The building always felt strange after midnight, but I told myself it was just emptiness and shadows. One night, I was walking past an office room when a trash can flew out of the doorway and slammed into the wall right in front of me, hard, like someone had thrown it. I jumped back and stared at the room. Nothing else moved. I checked the room carefully. No one was there. Nothing could have tipped it over. That wasn't the only thing. Other nights, we heard what sounded like kids playing or crying, always from the office section. Sometimes there was knocking on doors when no one else was around. One employee refused to work nights anymore because of it. The air in that building changes late at night. It feels heavy, like something is wrong but can't be seen. Everyone who's worked there long enough has a story. I avoid being there alone now, especially after 2 or 3 in the morning. That's when the building feels most awake.